So, call back to order the school board meeting. We started at 6 o'clock with closed session on two issues. And so the first thing is public comments, which we do have a couple emails that were sent in asking to be read as public comments. The first one, dear Waunakee board members, on behalf of the Waunakee girls golf team, the captains have collectively written this letter to share our perspective and voice in the upcoming decision regarding traveling outside of Dane County for participating in a tournament series. A few things that we have already implemented this season to keep our teammates, coaches, and community safe are social distancing, wearing masks on the practice green, or getting near people's 6-foot boundary. To further enforce our social distancing guidelines, we have done split squad practices where even our small team of 20 girls can be more spread out. Seniors and juniors practice together at an earlier time while sophomores and freshmen practice together at a later time. All of these new rules have been strictly enforced and accepted by our team, and we are grateful for the season that has been given to us. You might already know what golf means to us and our fellow teammates from letters a few weeks ago. This hasn't changed. If anything, it has grown larger. We have made new friends and grew old ones. We have seen each other grow as people and in the sport. We are grateful for the opportunities we have been given. It will be a blessing to travel outside of Dane County for a tournament series. Thank you for your consideration and time. We also want to thank you about the other decisions you are making within the district, and we understand your position is not easy. Thank you for keeping our community safe and strong. Waunakee girls golf seniors, Sydney Grimm, Allie Kinzel, Eleni Meyer, and Natalie Hay. Another one that came in to Waunakee Board of Education from Paul Miller, Waunakee girls golf coach, Monday, September 7th, 2020. First and foremost, thank you for giving cross-country tennis and girls golf the chance to compete this fall. Our golfers have taken the opportunity to play with a positive attitude and mindset toward growing and improving each and every day. Equally important, the girls have definitely embraced this time to reconnect with one another now that the season has started. Last season, our team was fortunate enough to make it to the WIAA state tournament where we finished 5th overall in Division I. We have 3 now seniors that compete on that team, and I can tell you that since the last putt was held at University Ridge, a huge focus of these seniors as well as our up-and-coming players has been a return to the state tournament, at least the opportunity to represent Waunakee in the regional and or sectional tournaments. But then COVID-19 not only changed the possibility of making that happen, but it nearly jeopardized the entire season for our 22 athletes. Even with the uncertainty in front of them, our varsity and junior varsity caliber athletes never stopped working during the off-season for the opportunity to not only compete, but just maybe make it to the state tournament, which after all is the ultimate goal of high school golfers. I ask you to please consider this as well as the following reasons as to why allowing the varsity team to compete outside of Dane County in the WIAA tournament series can be achieved safely and successfully. Most notable are the adaptations that have been implemented for both practices and matches in the midst of COVID. Our priority has been to get kids spaced out, so we have split squad practices that limit the player to coach ratio to basically 5 to 1. When players and coaches are in a situation that they may not be able to socially distance themselves, they are masking up during practices and competitions. We have utilized the district implemented health forms with 100% success. Even more importantly, during matches and tournaments, we have utilized strict tee time starts versus large scale shotgun starts that historically had players gathered in large groups at the start and end of tournaments. These practices have been utilized this season in numerous tournaments throughout the state thanks to the model set by the PGA Wisconsin Junior Foundation this summer. To the players, the structured format is virtually second nature. We would cherish the opportunity to represent Waunakee in the WIAA tournament series. Thankfully, when talking about the logistics of this for girls golf, we are looking at transporting only 5 varsity players and a coach to competition sites. And you can be sure that the team clearly understands that everything they have been allowed to do thus far has been a complete gift and trusted privilege from the board and the community. Thank you for your time and considering this request. With gratitude, Paul Miller, Waunakee girls golf coach. And one more. Hello, Board of Education Co-Curricular Committee, Judy, Mark, Joan, and Aaron. I'm ready to ask for your support in giving our WCHS student athletes the opportunity to compete outside of Dane County. This would mean so much for our teams, and I imagine our school community as well. A decision in this favor can be a demonstration of the trust and faith we place in one another and can offer the athletes and their teams incentive for the continued dedication and hard work. I've written to each of you previously, and I appreciate the heartfelt consideration that has been given to what is possible with care, mindful thought, and intentional action. Like many others, we're pulling for you, the staff, and our kids. Last year, our daughter Sarah competed in state tennis. She proudly represented her varsity team, the high school, our community, and her family. Additionally, she invested a tremendous amount of energy and time throughout the off-season preparing to make a run for state tennis again this year. She's also using this year's season competition as leverage for her to make a college team's roster. She is counting on you to make that possible. I know of other WCHS families who've cheered and celebrated their kids' state competition successes on the court, on the greens, and in the field. Like me, they too advocate for the athletes. They want to be right there again this year. You likely recall our WCHS golf team went to state last year. The cross-country team also had state-honored athletes. This success does not come easy. The payoff is being able to experience premium matches and races and to have the opportunity to compete in postseason competitions. For what it's worth, it seems that there are a few schools in the Badger Conference that are willing to come to Waunakee to play. Coach Chris continues to offer the invitation to host tennis matches in Waunakee, and yet the number of our matches are much more limited than what kids and the team hope to experience. We need our competition outside of Dane County. WCHS athletes add value to those engagements. Living in Dane County, we know and adhere to safety measures. The kids demonstrate how much they care. They take this seriously. They see this in their tennis teammates, and I hear it from parents whose kids are in golf and cross country as well. I have confidence that these athletes can continue to abide by these safety measures if when given the opportunity to compete outside of Dane County. It is with high hopes and a spirit of optimism that the student athletes, the tennis, cross country, and golf teams and their respective sport families look to you for your warrior spirit. You can do this, we can do this. Make us smile, we'll make you even more proud. Thank you appreciatively, Lori Sawinski, proud parent of a varsity tennis captain, strong supporter of our school community, and mom to 3 kids, 7th, 10th, and 12th. So those were the public comments we had sent in. That takes us, there's no one here to make a public comment. So that takes us to approval of agenda and options. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
And any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And that's taken care of. And we go right into number 6, COVID. And that first day of school.
Yeah, so today what I'm going to do is just give a verbal report on really the first day of school, really what we observed over the last middle school and high school. Did some soft starts last week where they had some connections with their kids, and then our other grades started today. And I had the opportunity to get into every building, walk through, and it's a very different start to the school year in that there's not buildings full of children, but we definitely, what I saw was many teachers very actively engaged within their meetings with their students, engaged with their remote learning and following through with the pieces that they've put forth on their schedule. So that was very good to see, and it was but a very different start to the year. From an elementary perspective, it was great to be in a building where you did have some kids. And I think we saw that with some of the activities that we were able to be successful with this summer, but to watch some of our students arrive this morning and then observe their activities in our K-2 rooms today was very positive. And interacting with some of those staff, I think that it was a successful start to the school year in that respect. Obviously, we have a lot of technology pieces that are moving with the start of the school year. I think generally they've gone extremely well. A lot of things have been deployed over the last number of weeks to staff and students. The issues that we've run into there's been a few glitches with just some of the Zoom links connecting as seamlessly as we'd like. A few issues with Google. There were some issues just with logins, not necessarily on our end, but we did some tech support for families at home who just needed to configure things to make things work. Had a few parents arrive that their Chromebook didn't start up or didn't work, so we swapped those pieces out. We had a couple issues with some iPads that were dispersed that were not cleared, and they had some items on them that we worked with those families on. And then we've had just a couple, some software glitches as we're starting to kind of get some things moving. I was at a couple of the schools, and they said, well, they've received some phone calls. I think you were looking at ones probably between 8 and 10 calls at a school, just with kind of questions about logging in or some logistical pieces. But overall, I think with all the tech-heavy work that has gone into this, I think it's overall gone fairly well. It was interesting just being able to get into a few classrooms that were teaching virtually and just seeing how they were set up, and that was quite impressive to see what our staff have and how they've devised their classrooms to deliver their online curriculum. I think they've done an excellent job with that. I know a question that the board has and that we're working on is really how is this everything impacted enrollment? We'll have probably a better idea of that in the coming days and coming weeks, particularly once we get to the third Friday count. We still have to see kind of who's arrived and who's checking in, and then we'll be able to give you a report on that. I'm anticipating that we're about a third virtual and 2/3, and primarily looking at those K2, third virtual and 2/3 in person. But we'll be able to granulate that down in more specifics either next Monday when I give a little more formal report or after the third Friday count. Busing, I think, went fairly well this morning. We were kind of observing that out at the buildings. Mike rode one of the buses today, and from your report, it went fairly well with all 4 of you on the bus.
I mean, I guess I haven't ridden a school bus in 30 years,
Yeah.
so maybe the look of terror was not what I was expecting, but
Yeah.
it's first day for a lot of those kids, and I think everybody did really well, and
Absolutely.
Mr. Marty did great with them on
Great.
the road I was on, so I was very impressed by everything.
Yeah, we had a few just minor things I know Steve's working with Lamers on as we start to correct those with any first day, but our ridership was relatively low, and I think that's helped us to deliver those pieces. So I know we have some shifts with parents as far as they've did their registrations, that they weren't sure if they were signing up for busing or not signing up, so there are some that are requesting busing at this point that I know Steve is working on with Lamers to see how we can adjust that in the coming weeks. It's obviously something we can't just flip in a day, because that would require doing a few things with the routes, but as we start to get settled in here over the next couple of weeks, we'll try to accommodate those pieces. The board previously had approved a meals program for families. I know that's a piece Steve gave me an update on today. Today we served 19 meals in the morning and 11 in the afternoon. We're checking in to just make sure that the communication and pieces were tight on that, because that doesn't even account for like all of our free and reduced lunch families. So that'll be a piece that we're looking at, and the board also had approved looking at other ways that we could utilize TAHR for some supports of families, and their family meal program that they pushed out there has been hugely successful. I think they were anticipating about 15 families a day, and they're receiving requests of up to 60. So that's a positive piece that they've been able to.
Randy, is TAHR delivering those, or how do those?
It's basically kind of a bagged type lunch that they're handing out when the kids get on.
Pick it up at school.
Yeah, they get it and they take it home. Correct. So, yes. So it's kind of at the end of their day as they get on the bus to leave, then we would deliver those for those kids that have requested it.
What about, that's K2, right?
Yeah.
What about the older kids?
Steve?
Are people,
So we've offered a free and reduced program at all grades. So
Right.
we've got that program up and running like we would in a normal school year. We are operating out of the high school. We do have a delivery program in place, so we are delivering meals at the request of families if they're not able to pick up. But as Randy mentioned, the interest today was lower than what we had expected, including being lower than our free and reduced totals. So we're gonna have to work on that a little bit. It's a little bit challenging because we're asking our youngest students to identify first thing in the morning if they are wanting a meal to take home with them.
Right.
It's very different than if they know that they have a sack lunch versus needing a school lunch. So we're gonna need to get some additional communication out, because we would like to see our free and reduced families at a minimum requesting those meals. And we're having a lot of success with the family meals that helps us offer the free and reduced program. But those numbers were lower than what we were expecting today, and we just need to continue to be able to communicate that with families and make sure they know that we are offering that program K-12 and the meals are available.
Question is who's delivering? You said we got a delivery service. Is that school district or is that Topper?
It is TAR. So TAR staff, they're using the vehicle that they do use to deliver food, and so TAR staff are delivering the meals in the community.
Great, thanks.
So I'll give a more detailed update next Monday. We'll try and get a little bit more detail as far as some of the enrollment pieces. But I think some of that's probably not going to be as specific as until we get to the third Friday count.
Just informational, Randy, so I know how the K-2 open house went for face-to-face students. For the students who are 100% virtual, did any of them have an actual face-to-face or Zoom meeting with their teacher?
I think K4, they had it virtually. They had a virtual open house with their teacher where they had some of those connections.
All right.
Yeah. I know there were some things like the intermediate school did a little bit, they did some more things. Part of the reason they did that is they normally have a time where the last year's fourth graders transitioned to the fifth grade. They didn't get a chance to do that, so they did some of that as part of their materials pickup.
I know at the sixth grade, because I have a granddaughter there, she had a whole hour face-to-face. There were 3 other kids with 1 parent each. They took their Chromebooks, they went to every site, made sure that everybody was linked together. Very impressive.
Yep. And then the high school did some of their distribution during the professional development week. I actually went through the high school today and they had the materials that weren't picked up fit on less than 2 of those white tables.
Yeah.
So that was for a high school of 1,300 kids that you probably had less than a dozen things that were picked up that was pretty impressive.
That was, I volunteered last Monday
Yeah.
when the freshmen came through, and it was amazingly impressive how organized it was. They came in one door, they had a stack with their schedule, they picked it up, walked out another door. It was a huge amount of work and hugely impressive how they streamed through.
Great. Any other questions? All right. I move on to the next item. It's really just want to give an update on public health and some of the metric pieces. So I'm going to hand out a sheet for you just to take a look at. I took this right off of Public Health's website. The last time we were together to discuss this, we were just coming out of a new order number 8, I believe, or order number 9, which was the one that was allowing K2 in and then breaking out 3-5 and 6-12. There was an amendment to this just within this last week or so, which was now allowing us really to do partially what we were hoping to do in the beginning, which was kind of that enhanced remote for some of our kids with IEPs and to bring in some of our students with disabilities. Kurt Ely and his staff are working with the case managers and parents to pull some of those pieces together and identify which students would benefit from that. There's obviously some families who are also looking at this as trying to decide if this is a good fit for them as a student to be in the school in person, or if they wanted to stay virtually. So that process is taking place. And first opportunities for kids to come into the building under this new part of the rule will be next week. So on Monday, on the 15th, next Tuesday. The other piece, what I've just handed out to you is really a copy of what the metrics are that are important to us as a school district in Dane County. And this is the chart that you'll find under the metrics tab for public health. And what you can see is it's broken out by K2, 3, 5, and 6, 12. It talks about the targets for resuming in-person instruction. So you can see the K2 is when you average 54 or fewer cases per day sustained over 4 weeks. So that was what allowed us to open up, because that was met in late August and is continuing at this point. And then you can see the metrics we need to hit for 3, 5, and 6, 12, the 39 and the 19. If you go back just 10 days ago, we actually met that. 10 days ago for the 3, 5, we had 38.5. But this past Wednesday, it was greater than that. You can see that per this chart, the average over the last that prior 14 days was 45 cases. So then, therefore, the 3, 5 has not met, and we have to kind of start over with that metric. Yep.
So Randy, is there a site that we can check on a regular basis?
Absolutely. You can go right to Public Health, Madison-Dane County, and you just hit the COVID link at the top of the page, and it will lead you right to you hit the metrics, it'll take you right to the school metrics.
So did they publish it only like once a week though, or did it change?
This one they update every Wednesday. So this document gets this is right on their metrics sheet page, and it gets updated every Wednesday. So we should be getting some new numbers tomorrow. The other piece that I want to share with you is when you take a look at, and if you look at Madison 365 today, they put out a piece on COVID numbers. Obviously, over the weekend, we had some pretty high numbers. We had a 190, and I believe the numbers that they were quoting for today were like 216, so pretty high. So when you start to look at these as they're averaging over these past, so taking the next snapshot of data is going to start to include some of these higher numbers. What happens if we go above 54? Does that then jeopardize our K2 students being able to be in person? According to the metrics, it does, but also per Public Health in their conversations and in their meeting they had with us last week, they also shared that that's not the only indicator of when they would kind of pull back from in-person learning. There's other pieces that they would also take into account. So I can't quantify all of those pieces, but that's definitely a piece that would be, that we're watching is these metrics, but also looking at what that would mean for really what other data they're looking at or what other factors they would look at to allow us to continue with the programs we have in place right now in person, and at what point would they pull back from those, our ability to do those. So that's kind of in process. The piece that I do know is if we got to a point where they were going to change the order and not allow us to have our K2 in place, then that would come through the issuance of a new order. And then through that order, there would be a time date set. So if you look at like the past practice, is we would normally have an indication probably a day or so in advance of that new order coming out. That order would then be released, and then there'd be a date for when it would become active, and then that would be how we would have to respond accordingly. I think I hope that doesn't occur, because we put a great deal of work into bringing our K2 students in. The piece that I guess I would feel we are situated at this point, that if that did occur, that I think our staff are in a place where we can, I wouldn't say seamlessly, but relatively seamlessly move to a different model of delivery. The other piece that we've heard from Public Health is that they don't anticipate it at a point of not allowing us to have people in the buildings. So being able to continue to teach and instruct from those locations would still be most likely allowable. those are the pieces that we are watching with regards to public health. So the pieces to be looking at, this data will get updated again tomorrow, so to be watching what that means. We'll be seeing then how public health responds if we do, by chance, jump over that 54 mark. And how do they then quantify that as far as us allowing us to move forward? If by any chance there's going to be a change, that would come via a new order. So those are the pieces that we're watching very closely as we look at our metrics. Any questions about the public health order or any of the metrics that are currently available out there?
It's the only question that I've got is more long-term. You get 3 through 5, you gotta meet 39 days. And, 6 through 12, you gotta meet 19 days. When do you say, let's say that, we're hovering around 40 cases per day now through March or April. When do you say we're gonna keep it virtual for the rest of the year? Is there a time that we should be looking at to say, hey, if we don't meet these dates or numbers by a date, it doesn't make sense to.
And I think that's a conversation, I think, as we get, I think some of these are very much a stretch for us to reach. It's very accurate to your point. 19 is a really low number. I think even when we talked about that with some of the folks within our medical advisory group, that may or may, that's almost a post-vaccine number. And so there's a point that's probably definitely after the first of the year. And I think the question that you bring up, Jack, is a good one. If it doesn't come down to that number till, let's just hypothetically say April, do we bring them back, or do we just stay with what we're doing? I think that's a great question. But I think that's a piece we can talk about once we see where those numbers are. But I definitely think that there probably is a point where we need to consider that. Because particularly when you look at moving from a virtual into a hybrid, those don't go seamlessly. It'll work fairly well, I think, with our K through 6, because we've really put a lot of work on the front end to be able to develop the hybrid to start with. At the high school, you really built it off of the virtual, and to now flip it into the hybrid really causes some disruption as far as where some of those kids fall and what classes, etc. So there is a point, particularly at that level, I think, that you kind of say this is kind of our point where we're going to weather through this direction if we get to X date. It's a great point.
Although I would think there'd be some situational things that would make sense, like maybe finals week would make more sense in person if available than just saying, we're going to come back for classes.
Right.
Or specific events might make more sense to do, like testing for your AP classes.
Yeah, it may bring up some hybrid type things that just are different than the AB schedule. I think we'll have to kind of cross that road when we get there, but there's definitely merit to what you're bringing up, Jack, as far as kind of when do we kind of keep this as our primary mode of delivery, and we may have some deviations off of it, even some abilities to expand, like the enhanced remote pieces to get some more kids in small groups, maybe a kind of a mediary way through that. But I'll keep you updated on these pieces, but you can watch them in my next board letter. I'll try to remember to kind of give you the link of where you can see these and follow them.
Awesome. Next is co-curricular.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Aaron to kind of jump up to the table here. In your packet, and Rebecca, can you bring up the document that Aaron put together? What I wanted to do tonight was just, there's been so many decisions that have come across in front of the board over the last number of months and weeks. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page as we kind of move forward, particularly as we have things happening virtually and in person. And so what I've brought up here and what Aaron has put together is really just a summary of some of the activities that are happening, or that there's some desire or request to see if they can occur. So I just want to kind of talk through a few of these, kind of per our last discussions, then open it up for some questions. There's 2 points that I would like feedback on tonight, and I'll get to those as I touch on them in just a second. So at the very top things, you can see the things that we've already really approved as a board to move forward with. The cross country, girls golf, girls tennis, and continuing with the summer school strength and conditioning class. Those are pieces that we've generally approved for us to continue with the parameters of public health. The strength and conditioning piece is kind of transitioned from a summer school program to a Fund 80 program. I know Aaron's worked with Steve on that. So students can pay $25 and continue to participate, and we're able to socially distance, have kids outside, and be part of a program that I think has been really positively received. We've also talked about, per what was allowed by WIAA, the contact days, and Aaron has defined those as basically limited to 5 days. That's kind of during the off season when you can have contact with your student athletes for different. You just go to keep it at the top there. Thank you. Right there is fine. And you can see that Aaron has kind of outlined that for football, cheer, soccer, and volleyball. There's also contact days that are allowable for some of our winter sports as well, that are allowable for those coaches to make connections in with our kids. So you can see the dates that we've tentatively kind of outlined there. These all have to fall within public health guidelines, so it's not football in the true sense of football as you normally would see it, but it's the socially distanced allowable type of football activities that would be there. Same for soccer and volleyball and cheer. A question that has come up is with regards to, in addition to those contact days, do we want to allow any type of open gym or open field? And that's kind of a piece where kids can drop by, and then there would be like a coach present, and you would have opportunities for kids to be either practicing skills or doing different things, either in a gym or in a field, on a field that would be supervised, but really not necessarily run by the coach. So they're different than contact days. There's been a request from the coaching staff to continue and do some of the work there. I'll come back to that in just a minute after I kind of go through the whole list here. The strength and conditioning piece we'd like to continue. That's been really very popular. We would like to also encourage all of our coaches from all the different sports to become involved with that. It's certainly been open to all of our student athletes and our students in the high school, and we would encourage any of our other coaches to assist with that, particularly as they're looking to interact with kids within their programs. The aquatic center has been a piece. Yeah, Joan.
On the strength and conditioning, it says that it was only open to students that participated in the summer school. Is that true? Or?
So they were given first priority to sign up
Okay.
to continue with their program. And now that we've got it kind of set up, we could reopen it again. But we gave preference to that group of students because they were already in the
So how many kids are
programs. Right now we have 180 students signed up.
So are those athletes that would cover all sports?
So those are male and female athletes across just about every sport that we have.
Do you feel there are kids that want to be in it that have been left out?
I would say there's probably students that want weight room access that have not been able to get in there. We do have, with any of these programs, we do have to put a cap on the limit because of the public health requirements, and just the time that we have in the day, because we can only do groups of 25 if we're on the stadium. So there is some logistical limitations to the number of students we can service in a day, because we only have the time basically after school. We do have one session that goes before school.
That's a piece we'd like to continue if we're able to. There's a few questions we have with regards to it, but generally if we're able to continue that, we would like to. The aquatic center has been a piece, and obviously we've had repairs done with that over the summer, and then it hasn't been opened during this time of COVID. We are working through, there's a few things with just the staffing that would allow us to open it up at the end of September. So Aaron has worked with Christy to look at how we could do that. So we'd like to open that piece up. And then on the last page here, you have the middle school. And as we looked at the high school programs, we felt that those, and I believe per some of our conversations, it allows really some contact again within the parameters of public health to allow us to get some of our middle school students active who are participating in cross-country football and volleyball. So those are kind of the things that we're kind of already kind of have in motion that we would like to continue with. The pieces that we'd like some feedback on are for our sports at the very top of the page. We're starting, we've had a rule, or we set a parameter within from the board that we would not allow travel outside of Dane County. So our sports of cross-country, girls golf, tennis have been maintaining their participation within the county and requiring then teams to travel to us. And what there is a request to, and I'd like to kind of get the temperature of the board on, is now as we start to move towards regional, sectionals, and state, which is allowing those groups to then travel to those as they qualify. Otherwise, we take away those opportunities to kind of move through there. Now, these are considered the low contact or low risk sports in our county, which would allow us to then potentially, allows us to participate in them. So the question for the board is, for these type of tournaments, would we be open to them participating in regional, sectionals, and state competitions, even if they were outside of Dane County, if they qualify?
I think that there's also a request for the remainder of the season to even compete in the Badger Conference as long as we follow Dane County rules, health rules. And I don't know that we should exclude that from the conversation either.
So I know Aaron, part of what the challenge I know Aaron has had is just trying to schedule some of these pieces, because much of Dane County, some of the Dane County schools have really made some early decisions to really shut down all of their activities. And they've moved them to the spring or just canceled them in entirety. So there's a few districts, I know Waunakee, DeForest.
DeForest has been offering the same things we are. Deerfield is another one in Dane County, but there's not many. Edgewood, it's really made it a challenge to host these, or to schedule these things in the fall. But I guess more so what I'm looking forward to is with the WIA playoffs. I had a phone conversation with one of their associate directors, Tom Shafransky, and he did explain to me that, at least for tennis and golf, they're planning to run their fall playoffs as normal in terms of subsectional, regionals, sectionals, and the state tournament. They're going to have to move those locations. They haven't said where they're going to move tennis, which is typically at the Nielsen, or where they're going to move golf from U Ridge. But without this, we're basically, we're telling these girls tennis, girls golfers, that their season is over in the next couple of weeks if we don't allow this.
I would submit that we let the athletes participate in the regional, sectional, and state meet if they qualify. I would put one caveat on, coming out of the medical advisory committee that we had, is how do we mitigate risk of bringing things back? And I would submit that if we allow it, then we quarantine, for 14 days. It shouldn't be that difficult for our high school students to quarantine because it's virtual anyways.
So if they come back from the sub-regional and quarantine for 14 days and then it's the regional and sectionals.
Yeah.
Well, they could participate in the.
Not if they're quarantined.
They happen one weekend after the other.
Right,
Yeah.
they happen one weekend after the other. So if we're worried in Dane County about risk, then they would come back and, you know, for that period that they're in Dane County, they would quarantine.
We don't ask anybody to quarantine when they leave Dane County and come back to school, though.
No, I understand that. We don't, you know, we're bringing in Baraboo, we're bringing in Sauk, we're bringing in all these people. I'm just suggesting that if we're concerned about risk with our athletes going out and competing and coming back, it might be an option.
Well, I think the main, if I recall, the reason we voted not to let outside Dane County is because of the medical restrictions Dane County Health suggested, and seeing the medical ad hoc committee pretty much said yes to all those restrictions. And our problem was if we let students go outside on a school activity and then they're not going to follow the restrictions once they're outside the county, or these other schools aren't. And I think that brings up a couple things that have already happened with these teams that I think I don't know if everybody got all the emails from some of these, but I mean, we know that there's a limit of how many people you can have at an event. It's 25, is it?
Outdoor events are limited to 25.
Right.
Yeah.
So that created a problem of parents being able to view the activities. Mainly tennis, I think it was, had the one. So we had a tennis thing going on at Rick Park, and we got who the email come? Was it the village?
Oh, so,
About
yeah.
the parking issue, because the parents were told they cannot be there watching the activity because it put it way over the 25 number. So a bunch of the parents, or some parents, sat in their cars and parked in the grass so they could watch the tournament, which was an illegal parking situation with the village, but also it was definitely kind of scouting the rule, or circumventing the rule of 25. If we sit there and say that we're gonna let the kids go and compete in another county where there isn't a 25 rule, what did we just do? I guarantee the parents are gonna go and watch, and they're gonna be way over the 25 number that Dane County says we're supposed to be doing, and that medical committee said, that's a good idea. And yet, we just went and said, go ahead.
And that's why,
That's problematic.
that's why I would suggest that if we let our athletes go outside to either the regionals or the sectionals of the state, they would self-quarantine while they're in that competition. You know,
But they're gonna go to team practices, and they're gonna
And our
go
team
to the
practices-
competition the very next week.
But our competition, you know, if you look at running, you don't have to be in a team practice to run. And with cross country, you get sectionals and then you go to state. And you're talking, in a lot of these cases, what's the tennis team that could potentially go, you know, if the whole team went to
So if
state?
it was the whole team, like a whole team entry,
Yeah, if they,
you would have 10 girls max.
and then golf is?
Golf is 5.
5. Cross country, you're looking at, you know, if the girls make it to state, it would be 7
Yeah.
and maybe 2 alternates. So you're really looking at a really small population. And I think, you know, if we want to mitigate the risk, you know, at least the cross country parents have indicated that they would work with the district to, you know, do their, you know, mitigate the risk within the county.
I don't think we can require them to quarantine. I mean, it
Well,
doesn't
we
really
may not
matter,
be able
they're not
to-
gonna be at the school the whole next 2 weeks anyway. You could say one.
You have no way to regulate that in the lease. I don't support that idea. I would like to suggest, so if we're gonna let them do the regionals and sectionals, we do consider letting them finish, they can compete in the Badger Conference outside of the county between now and the start of those tournaments, as long as they're following Dane County protocol.
They're
at
not
the
following
site.
it now.
I'm saying that the tournament is set up, so right now, if you're in SWAC, you could run doubles. So if SWAC is willing to let Waunakee come in a competition and drop the doubles and maintain the protocols, then we would allow them to compete under those circumstances. And it would require the ADs, you know,
Just based on
Maintain that.
conversations with ADs, that would be a non-starter. You have, in other counties, the atmosphere around this whole situation is very different. And if we were to put some kind of stipulation on that we're going to come to, for example, Baraboo to
Right.
play you in tennis, but we're not going to play doubles because that's not allowed in Dane County, the Baraboo AD would say, well, we're in Sauk County, so we're going to follow the Sauk County rules. And if you can't do that, we're not going to have you come and play. And that's, I mean, honestly, that's what people have basically said to me now. We're not coming to Dane County because our community doesn't support those rules. And that's where we've struggled to schedule people. So that's where we're at. That's where I'm at with those things.
so
And I would
the
just say this
conference
too.
competition,
Yep.
in your estimation, isn't practical because no one would agree to it.
Yeah. And I would also say there's, for the fall season, there are no official Badger events because not like
Right.
Badger. So we've been playing against Badger conference schools, but they're all, everything's considered a quote unquote non-conference
Right.
event. So we don't have a conference cross-country meet, end of the season meet like we have in the past, where all 8 Badger North schools get together in one site and run. We've gotten rid of those events for this fall season because everybody's in a different spot depending on what county we're in. If you think about the Badger Conference, it's 16 schools spread out over 9 counties. And each of those 9 counties have very different rules. You know, you have, whether it's us that's fully virtual, along with DeForest and things like that, to a Watertown, which is running football season right now, and volleyball and soccer seasons as we speak. They had their first day of practice yesterday. And they're going, you know, with a hybrid model already in education in their school district. So for us to tell them, we'll come to you, but these are the rules we have to play by, they're gonna find somebody else.
I think the other thing, go ahead.
Let me talk, Jack, I'm gonna agree with you. So, I'm glad Aaron said what he said about other counties, because, I don't know how many people are going out to Rip Park and seeing what's going on there on a regular basis anyway, and but to be blunt, there's a hell of a lot more than 25 people watching tennis at any given time, watching soccer. I've been there, there's 150 people out there at any given time. So, we're already well beyond what the rules already require in Dane County anyway. These are students that are telling us that they want to do this and take the risk to themselves. There's zero risk they're going to transfer it to other students because we're virtual anyway. There's zero risk to our staff in the buildings because they're not seeing kids in person anyway. The students are still obligated to follow our policy when they leave the county. And the club sports are still practicing anyway. I mean, soccer practices at DeLeo every time. My father-in-law's a coach. They're traveling around doing stuff. I think the rule prohibiting them from going out of county is ineffectual and intended to look good, but is doing nothing but frustrating the students that want to compete. So I'd agree with Jack, we should let them do it. There is no risk but the risk that students are potentially taking to themselves, and that's manageable and small because they're stuck at home anyway. So I agree with you, Jack.
The funny thing is, you're basically admitting that if they go out of county, they're not going to follow the rules because they're not following the rules within Waunakee, right?
I guess I'm not sure what the rules are. you
Well,
mean.
the 25, basically, we have letters here from the parents and stuff saying, we're following all the rules, yet you're telling me at the same time the tennis team is not.
But
That
Dave,
they're out there over the numbers. So if they go out of county and we're saying within Waunakee they're not following the rules, if they go out of county they're not going to follow the rules, I get your argument in a sense saying, what does it matter then?
But I think, go ahead.
Which is probably why almost all the other schools in Dane County have said no sports. We're one of only 2 or 3. Yeah.
Dave, I think we need to focus on, we need to keep our athletes safe. And are they any more safe for participating in Dane County or out of Dane County? Just our athletes. I don't care what the parents do. That's their risk and their thing, and they go outside of Dane County and party all the time. We can't control that.
No.
We need to look at our athletes only. And are they more safe here than they are in Dane County? Don't they participate with the same kind of protocol?
So when they go to different communities or counties, like I said, it's so different from county to county. But in terms of basic protocols, yeah, the WIA has set up basic protocols for us to follow minimize to the extent possible the risk of spread. We can never get to 0.
No,
But
we
there's
know
some
that.
basic steps we can take to minimize these things. And that's what I would say the outside of Dane County schools are following those WIA and NFHS, National Federation of High Schools.
So I see I think it's fine for our athletes if they've earned that status and that participation level, they should continue that competition. And what our parents do, 25 or 500, that's your parents. We
Maybe
can't
that's
control
why
it.
most of the other schools have said no sports. If you're really talking about making the athletes safe, we know that whatever rules we have, they're going to get violated.
Well,
That's why there's almost nobody
I'm
in
not sure about that,
Dane
because
County.
we had a cross-country meet, and, the parents were very respectful in the cross-country meet. We had some volunteers and so forth. The athletes were in, they were out, so we really did maintain,
So
I would suspect that it was about 25, maybe it was 30, but
So we had some bumps in the road there with tennis. I'm not going to deny that. But I think we're at a spot now where they understand where we're at. Cross country, we had our first home cross country meet on Thursday. Went very well in terms of us being able to control the crowds. Now, one of the things that is different about Rip Park is you have 8 to 10 acres or whatever size field that is. And per public health guidelines or guidance, you're allowed to have 25 people in your group. The people working the event do not count towards that 25 number. So when we're talking about the 25 people in the cross country meet, that's the runners, and that's why we said no spectators. So we have the 7. For example, on Thursday, we had this, our 7 varsity boys, there's Saukberry 7 varsity boys. They're going out, and we're sending one out at a time every 30 seconds. So they're already distanced out from each other. But when you start getting those distances, it looks like there's a lot of people running around the park. And there is. But since we're all in one group and we're not commingling with any of those other groups, per public health guidelines, we're still allowed to have 25 people on a soccer field. Village Rec is. They're still allowed to have 25 people on a baseball field because those groups aren't commingling with each other. And so each one of those is a self-contained group of 25. So yeah, when you go there, looks like there's a lot of people there, but they're not commingling with each other is the key thing that from the guidance I've been given by public health with how to run these things. We had race day events there to help us run it. They've run cross-country meets at Lake Farm Park and a couple other places in Dane County with the approval of public health. So they were there. There were 2 people there who did an awesome job helping us set up the timing, set up how we sent kids out. And then when they got finish line, we escorted them right out of the park and would bring in the next wave of kids to do the JV meets. So we never had more than 25 kids on the course at one time. But yes, it did look busy on Thursday night, but I thought we did a very good job of keeping all the different groups separated from each other.
And I think we're into the season now, to schedule other events, it would be difficult. but I think it's important, that these kids have worked their hearts and souls over the summer to participate in, the regionals, sectionals, and luck, if luck would have it, the state win. And I think all of these event organizers are doing a good job trying to mitigate the risk for students and athletes.
I think we just have to admit one thing, that we will have rules within our schools saying what the safety standard is, and for sports, we will not. And as long as we're willing to admit that, then we can vote that way. That's pretty much the reason every other school district has shut down sports, because they realize they can't. They can't do it under the rules Dane County has. They can't do it against a single team outside of Dane County, which is why, as Aaron said, the other teams won't play by that rule. If you want to play by that rule, we're not going to play you, we're going to play somebody else. I mean, that's the reality. And as long as we understand that and we're going to vote that way, that's fine. But realize we have another season coming up. Every one of these teams is asked to travel outside of Dane County for regular games. If we do it for tournament games, why wouldn't we do it for regular games? There's no reason not to. It's the same risk. But we have to, I think as we go forward, we just have to understand what we're voting for and where we're going. And if we want to say, open sports up totally, then we can. But
I don't think we're
let's
asking
be honest
to
where we're going.
open sports up totally. I think what we're asking, and I think what people are asking is, can we send our athletes to a state competition?
No.
Can they participate in the state tournament?
Why would you consider a team going to a state tournament any different than a team going to Baraboo to play against them? Why is that different?
Baraboo's coming to us.
Really?
Soccer's coming to us.
Yeah.
They're not.
You're not coming to us.
They are.
Aaron just said that.
Baraboo's coming on Thursday.
Baraboo's coming
Cross
on
country.
Thursday.
For cross country.
But how many have said no?
Well, just in general, we've had, whether it's Sauk Prairie's tennis team has said no to us, Nicolet's tennis team has said no to us. We have, I think, Beaver Dam's cross-country team declined. Watertown, we were originally had a date for them, but they're now kind of having some, I'll call it, second thoughts regarding the setup of the meet. So we're still, I'll call it, in negotiations. We still have it on the schedule because they haven't officially pulled out yet.
So really, to get a better clarity of when we're talking about allowing kids going to state, it seems to me that cross-country and golf can do that and will be able to maintain pretty much the same standards they would if they're competing at home.
If you don't allow them to leave the county, they are not going to.
No. But when they leave the county, their experience isn't going to be a whole lot different. Tennis may be unique that if they leave the county for sub-regionals, regional sectionals, they're going to be playing doubles.
We could potentially enter doubles. Yes. That would be the most significant change, I think.
If I can just try to add something, one of the things you're looking at, the reason these sports are up there is because they're viewed as minimal risk.
Right.
That's what Public Health Madison-Dane County articulated them as. You then have other pieces within this order as far as the mass gathering pieces, etc. But as far as like the operations of the sport, other than exactly what Aaron said with regards to singles or doubles on the tennis court, you also have guidelines that have been given, which I think many of the districts are also following, which is the WIAA safety protocols, which have in many respects the similar type of things associated with low-risk sports that Madison-Dane County has. So that's relatively similar. So I think when you kind of look at that piece and look at it as the low-risk sports, the question really comes, are we going to allow them to participate in their tournament? That's really the question. So, I mean, that's the question I think we need an answer to so we can give some direction to them. And David may be one to see if there's anyone that wants to.
There's gonna have to be a motion.
I would like to
Because-
move that we allow the low-risk fall sports to compete in the WA tournament season.
I second that.
Judy?
So as a volunteer cross-country coach, do I have to abstain?
I think you probably need to abstain by policy. I'm looking to Mike, because you and I wrote
Yeah,
that
I've been looking
policy.
up.
And I thought we said that.
I think so.
Give me a second, I should have looked that one up ahead of time. You got it, Mike? Or you need-
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Is there reason to consider allowing out-of-county competition prior to, I don't know, regional state competitions at all? Is there an opportunity for?
I would say the likelihood of me being able to get something like that onto a schedule at this point would be very slim. So I don't know, even if we would allow it, what my chances would be to get something like that scheduled.
Although realize
We're really close to the regionals, aren't we?
Yeah.
For golf, tennis, we're really close. Cross country comes about a week or two after those two sports.
although this is a policy that will affect the next season too, which is coming up. Although we haven't,
Actually, no,
We're just
we've only
voting
addressed
on
the fall
these
sports.
we're just voting on these guys right now.
The next set of seasons also fall primarily within
The
the
middle of the high
medium
risk.
range or high range.
there's no
Except for,
low range. in
except for
this.
boy, swimming probably falls in low.
So boys swim is considered low risk. The individual events are considered low risk, but the relays are considered medium risk. Gymnastics is considered low risk. Now, the difficulty there is with the group size limitation of 10, we basically can't run a meet without, with that low group size, because we can't get enough competitors in there at one time. We'd have basically warm-ups, they'd swim, then we have to do warm-ups again and swim, and as a swim parent, Steve knows how long that would make a swim meet. If we had to stop basically every round and do another set of warm-ups. Logistically, wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, so on the voting issue, I'm just gonna read it,
Yep.
because it's crystal clear. Board members serving in the capacity of a coach of a co-curricular activity shall remove themselves from votes related to co-curricular activities that are directly related to activities in which they are serving as coach. So the answer is yes.
So I should abstain.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And one abstention for Jen.
How many no's was that?
None.
Okay.
Great.
So that takes us to, oh, you have another thing, open gyms.
Yeah, the other piece is open gyms. This is the piece that, and I guess it's kind of the question of how many things do we want to have kind of open and operating within the district. And from my perspective, we've been very successful walking things through in kind of a measured time frame. We have the low-risk sports moving. We've just addressed expanding some of that. We have the contact days, which we've already approved. We have high school and middle school. Potentially being able to continue with the strength and conditioning piece. There's also the concept that our coaches, I know I've talked to Aaron about, of this open gym, open field type concept. And, from my perspective, I guess I realize the benefit of having kids active. I also am kind of looking at this as from a management standpoint of being able to, from Aaron's perspective and the high school folks, to be able to be monitoring all of these given the volume of athletes and programs that it would take to maintain within that. So that's my
Yes.
perspective on it.
My concern, Aaron, how is it going to be regulated indoors? For example, right now, I know there are AAU teams that are practicing 5-on-5 and going to tournaments all over the Midwest. And so if those kids are coming in for the open gym to play, why aren't they gonna wanna go 5-on-5 like they do in their own practices? So, can they even do 3-on-3s?
So current rules right now, in Dane County, and this is, no, they can't. They can't, you can't do a drill where you would be within 6 feet of each other, so you can't guard someone. So really, it's more, if you were to ask our basketball coach, it's more about giving those boys and girls some hoops to shoot on. Some place to do some dribbling, some skill-based stuff that way. But open gyms are different. There's no, instruction, the WIA basically allows 2 types of off-season contact. Contact days are a full instruction, full practice. You get 5 of those to use throughout the year. Open gyms or open field is what it sounds like. It's the coach is there. There's explicitly no instruction to be given, and the coach's duty is simply to supervise, to maintain, make sure things are participating safely. So in this case, the coaches would be there to ensure that one, we're under that 10-person limit, and that they're not playing games, that they're not playing a 3-on-3, a pickup 1-on-1 game, or a 5-on-5 game in basketball. That's what those things would be there.
The pros and cons to it from my perspective is, my concern is that we open it up and we've got things going on from 3:30 till 9 o'clock at night. Just because we're going to have to create, and that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration time-wise, but you're going to have to create small groups of kids in order to meet the requirements of public health, and then you're going to have things with football, soccer, volleyball. It'll open it up for all of those, having open fields, open gyms,
To give you
and
the-
really operating a very active fields and gym activities after school. Obviously positive for kids, to get kids active. There's also a piece of management of all
And what
that.
about the turnaround? Because indoors, don't you have to do some sort of cleaning then or not?
You would have to do some of the
Between
cleaning
groups?
pieces, absolutely.
You'd have to work
Yeah,
with the
there would have to
custodians
be,
and
all of those
areas.
pieces would have to be part of it. So it's not as simple as just opening it up and then you run. The other piece is, it's kind of to Mike's point, you've got kids who are also doing things at the parks. So this is supervised. If you don't do it under a supervised piece, there's going to be a point where they will just find another place to do it. But we have to be okay then with knowing that we're going to see and have a lot of kids active within our community in all of those pieces. And we're going to have to then look at also being able to monitor it. And then all of those are going to have a protocol in place that are going to have to go through our piece with making sure they meet all of our requirements. And then we have to make sure that we can maintain and clean some of those
Well,
pieces.
and if we're going to do it, I would
So-
suggest, as you've done with the conditioning program, you may have to put a cap on how many sessions you can have because of the impact on maintenance staff and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it'd be
Some
nice
are
to have
outside, some are
10
not.
sessions, but maybe you can only have 3 sessions. I mean, that's something that I think that has to be understood.
My only concern is the scope of it.
I'm sorry.
I mean, my only concern is getting to the scope of how much we're trying to manage
Right,
here.
right.
And that's the piece, that's the one piece. I know Aaron, he and I have talked about that as well. But I also realize that if, in the absence of us doing it, kids do it on their own. So there's a part of this saying, if we can do this where there's somebody supervising it and helping to monitor that, but we have to then maintain, just as you said, it can't be 3-on-3 basketball. It's got to be people shooting at the hoops and maintaining the requirements put out by public health. Or it's going to be additional things that happen with football, soccer, in addition to some of their contact days. So you're going to see a lot of kids active within our community on our fields. So those are the pieces we just have to kind of be aware of as we open more of these things up. And then that would continue as we go into some of our other sports, particularly towards our winter, et cetera.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even, if we just were looking at, if you just look at our contact days that have already been approved for our fall sports, you're looking at almost 300 students there. You have 182 football players, 90 soccer, 98 volleyball players, and then a dozen or so cheer girls. And that's just 5 times where those 300 kids are gonna be on campus. Open gyms, yeah, there's gonna be just logistical limitations if you were to allow it, but it's still gonna be a significant number of people, significant number of activity at the schools.
I think we have 2 options. We either state that we are going to open that up and we want to take a look at, and that'd be a piece that Aaron would have to look at, the times and how that could actually work logistically. They have to go through our process, just like all the other groups have had to do. The other point is we just put a hold on that till we get through some of these contact days, and we kind of revisit it here in a month and kind of get past some of the work that we've talked about. And there still may be time for some of those open gyms and different concepts to take place. We're still only in September 8th. So I mean, there's potential we could just say, you know what, for right now, we're good with what we have, and we'll regroup here in a month and open some more of these things up as we kind of have more experience. Or we take a look at it and say, let Aaron administration to manage it, and we allow those things to occur, and we'll do our best to put those pieces on the calendar. We can do it either way.
I would think that based on what we have said before about not opening up stuff if we can't open up our classes, it would take a motion for somebody to say to open up the gyms and fields. The other stuff you guys can do no matter what. I mean, you can bring it back every month if you want to discuss about it and keep looking at it. But if some board members feel we should open up the gyms and fields, I would suggest you make a motion. Otherwise, we stay where we're at. Seeing no motion?
But I would like to see it come back after we get our, our open days, our athletes that are ready, our contact days done. I would like to revisit this, I think.
And actually, if Aaron would want to try, if you would be willing to work these folks and give us a vision of how it would work.
Yeah, I would like to see some logistics. It
What's the
seems
scope?
kinda-
What is the scope? Are we talking, 2 nights a week or 4 nights a week, but alternate groups, so it's only one group a night coming in? Well, I mean, that sort of thing.
I think some of the logistics have tentatively been worked out. I had Aaron kind of pull some of those off of here because there were things like, football had some very specific dates that they were looking to do some things. Others were to be determined. I mean, in my mind, I'd rather get through the contact times first, do those well,
Good,
and then we can revisit that in October, and we can still have time to open some of these things up.
perfect, good.
And I think based on WIAA, Dane County Health, and the schools around us, we're going to be talking about this every month
Oh,
anyway.
yeah, we are. Yeah.
We will.
They're going to make sure we're talking about this.
Very good. So just to kind of reiterate, we've approved the travel for the tournaments. Otherwise, the things on here, absent the open gym, board is feeling like that's in line with what we've already discussed and agreed to.
And the aquatic center, we're moving forward
Yeah,
with
that was a
reopening
piece that,
that.
we were looking to do, right.
Yep,
Thank you.
We're, we just have some delay in some lifeguard training, but we should be back on track. And again, targeting that last week in September to reopen for basically, we'd have 5 afternoon/evening sessions.
No, early morning?
Right now, no, but that's definitely something we can move to.
Well, how,
Oh, that's gonna.
Well, we want to make sure we're
That's
doing.
gonna make a lot of people unhappy in my household.
Yeah, well, we want to make sure that the process works. Christy's been working with John Kramer so if they see that 45-minute time slot, the 15-minute is in between there, so the lifeguards to go through and wipe some things down, do some other cleaning, because it is a warm, humid environment is a good breeding ground. So
Alright.
they do have to take some extra precautions.
how do you ensure that not too many people show up?
So
It's a sign up.
you have to sign up in a program called RegWorks,
Oh,
which
okay.
Steve can explain probably better than I could how that program actually
But basically, you have to sign up a day or so in advance.
Yep, so you sign up, there's 8 slots for each time period, and so everybody gets their own lane. And then that's how we ensure all the people are there.
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Thank you, Aaron.
And they're bringing their to come, to be in it, they have to do that daily health check form too, so we have that record on there too.
All right.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. And that takes us to respiratory program policy.
At the last meeting, Kurt talked to you about personal protective equipment. One of the pieces that he talked about was the N95 face coverings and the need for those to be part of a program for sanitation and cleaning. In order to do those, he also needs a policy in place in order for that to occur. So Kurt and the nurses have worked on a policy that is with regards to respiratory protection, and that is what you have in front of you, and I will let Kurt to talk more specifically and answer any questions that you may have.
So what you have in front of you is really just a modified version of a template that we received from the Department of Public Instruction. And it's really, the language is the same for any environment that has a respiratory protection program. And what it does is it allows us to then fit test our health assistants, our 2 school nurses, and then we have 1 staff member who has a medical documentation that indicates that if she has an N95 mask, she's able to work directly with students. So we'll be fit testing her as well. In every entity that does use N95s and does the fit testing needs to have a respiratory protection program in place in order to do that. So that's what this document does. It allows us to put all that in place for our staff.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And motion passes. Thank you very much.
Kurt, that's a record for you.
I love it.
I appreciate that.
A 7-page presentation in seconds.
Record time.
Thank you, Kurt. Right.
All right.
The next item we have is the communication plan for fall 2020 referendum. I'm going to ask Annie to step up, and she has been getting a crash course on school finance from Steve. And what we have worked on and put in your packet tonight are 3 different documents. You don't need to pull them up yet, Rebecca. One is just talking points for the board, just so you kind of understand all the different parts with regards to school finance and really what we're doing with regards to referendum. Second is a communication that we've drafted that we'll send out to staff. And then there'll be one very similar, we'll just title it differently and maybe change a little bit of the language, that'll be for parents. And then we're also looking at a document that I'm going to pass out right now with regards to a postcard flyer. Some of the language pieces on here are still in process, particularly the piece that talks about kind of what a yes vote means or a no vote. We don't want to accentuate kind of the yes proponent piece there, and then we want to clear up some of the things with regards to the fund accounting. But generally what we're looking for tonight is just some of your feedback on some of the communication pieces. Rebecca, if you can pull up the timeline. We've put together a basic timeline here, starting off with really when we came forward with the resolution to go to referendum for really to move the dollars from Fund 39 to Fund 10 for utilization for needs this year. We've looked at, tonight, we're looking at wanting to share our communication plan, have you provide us feedback so that we can start to move forward literally within the next days and within the next week to move all these pieces to our staff, to our parents, and to the community. The communication that would go out most likely tomorrow or on, tomorrow's already Wednesday, probably Wednesday or Thursday would be one to our staff and our parents. And then we're also going to be taking the postcard flyer. We're going to be this is really a mock-up from a visual standpoint, and we have some tweaking to do with the language within that. We would like to get that out by next week so that that hits mailboxes before the absentee ballots become active. So that's really the timelines that we are taking a look at, and we just wanted to bring these forward to you tonight and see if you had any feedback for us or things that you would like included or things that you think that would be helpful for folks in the community to better understand the issues in front of us. Anything to add, Annie?
I think we did print the flyer here. We're working with Minutemen local right here in town. This is a very first draft. It just hit our inbox, and so would really be open to your suggestions. You know, visually appealing. Any other items that you would like to be seen on that postcard. We do have a tight turnaround on that. We want to get that finalized within the next couple days so that can be printed. And then you see on the timeline that Randy and I created, next week really to finalize that mailing.
Kind of what we see for our plan is a flyer going out, postcard at this point in time. We're looking at, in October, doing a 3-part video series that we can push out community-wise, get it up onto social media, get it with Roberta. We'll do some additional pieces with the newspaper to really kind of help clarify some of the points, and then probably before the election, having another piece that comes out that just clarifies what the issue is in probably another postcard type format. We did meet with a few of the communications folks from EUA, just one, make the introduction to Annie, but we took a little bit of time to pick their brain from this. And we really want to try to keep this as simple as possible as far as kind of what we're trying to communicate. And so that's part of why we're taking the approach that we were looking at. So communications to families, to staff, a community flyer to go out this week, a video series in October that we can push out that informs the community on what we're doing and answers some of those main questions, and then another flyer before the election. So that's kind of what our strategy is as we kind of talked through it and bounced it off of some of the other folks who we valued their opinion on referendum type approaches. So open to feedback.
Questions or comments? One thing we would normally have had around a referendum like this is an open forum for the public to come in and ask questions.
Right.
Obviously, we can't do that in person.
Right.
But why wouldn't we use a Zoom and do similar to what we did with staff and parents?
And that's a piece we talked about, and I think part of it was just being, we can certainly do that, Dave. It's a very narrow referendum.
Right.
We've also done that when we've had very complicated pieces that we needed to really spend a lot more time explaining. I mean, in its most simplest form, this is really a fund accounting type piece where we're trying to just utilize dollars from one fund to move to another, and we need referendum vote to do that. Through Annie's and my conversation and talking to some of the folks at the UA, we felt we could communicate that through other means than having a larger forum. And that other forum may, not that bringing up other topics isn't appropriate for us to have dialogue with our community on, but trying to keep it focused on this topic may be one that's just a bit of a challenge to try to do one that's specifically focused on the referendum. So we thought our best focused approach would be kind of a video piece and an approach to push information out.
I don't know. I feel we need to let the public ask questions. Now, we can sit there and say if their question is, well, what about girls' tennis? And you say, well, that's not what we're talking about. You don't take the question.
Sure.
But any other time, we would have done that.
I'm open.
I think put the video series out first and then run that.
Yeah, we can do the video series in October, and we could run this maybe right before our last mailing and at the end of October. I have no problem doing some sort of like a webinar type piece that we've done another time. That just wasn't part of our initial conversations, but if that's something that the board would like us to do, that's absolutely fine with us.
But this is very focused. This referendum is very focused. We need funding to support the COVID.
Right.
So you either agree with that or you don't.
Well, I still think you let the public ask the question when you're asking them to vote for something. It's just part of the openness and keeping it above board. And you know what? We've been sitting here talking about it for months. Most of the public hasn't talked about it. Most of the public probably still hasn't heard about it. So I hope nobody shows up on it. I hope nobody shows up and asks a question, that everybody understands it, that the mailings work, that the videos work. But I would just think in any situation where you're asking people to vote on a tax matter, you give them a chance to ask questions they have about that matter. Because there's not going to be any other way for them to ask.
I would say if we want to do that, we do it after the video series.
Right.
We do it kind of towards the end of October.
Exactly. But get the video out, that might answer all the questions, and who knows, you run a Zoom with 1,000-person capability and you have one show up, which is yourself waiting to answer a question. That would be great, but I don't see why you wouldn't give that open door somehow.
We did also create a specific email address that individuals can ask questions.
Yeah, that should be on the postcard too,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
true. We had that
Yep.
for regular referendums.
Yep.
We created a unique address, and we'll have a piece where we'll populate everything up on our website, drive people there. We'll put some of the FAQ type questions out there that can get into a little bit more information about this. Probably take some of the things like from the board's talking points piece and break those out for the public so that they can understand what this actually is and why we're doing it. So that's our strategy.
Good.
So if you'd like us to add the webinar piece, Dave, that's not a hard, we can add that towards the end of October. And as we kind of progress, we'll keep you posted on what we're getting for questions and et cetera. And I think once we start sending these out, I'm sure we'll receive some questions that we can then populate onto an FAQ and keep everybody informed. Were the talking points helpful as far as those pieces, just to give you some guide as far as, is there anything else that you'd like more specific? Our approach to that was just to try to bullet point out, kind of in very sequential form, the steps through what a referendum like this is. So it's just really informative.
Yeah, if anything, I would say those talking points should be on that webpage about it.
Yep.
That would probably answer 98% of the questions.
Yep. Very good. Well, we'll proceed, so you can expect us to kind of pull together the documents that we have in board book tonight, and we'll get those moving out here in the next few days.
Thank you.
All right, so that takes us to sign language interpreter position.
In board book tonight, you see a memo from Kurt Ely requesting a sign language interpreter. This is per a student who's moved into our district who requires this service per their IEP. So we're asking for your support to move forward with hiring this position to service that need.
Are there any questions? I mean,
I'll make a
we need a
motion
motion.
to hire this person as needed.
we have a motion and a second.
Just a quick question. What is the position that's eligible for transfer of service? What does that mean?
Kurt?
Because the student moved here from another district and we incurred a new expenditure because of that, that expenditure then is eligible for a transfer of service application process that I do at the end of the year. And then it will be granted that. And then Steve is able to build that into the following year's budget, so the 2021-22 budget.
Okay, so it's a one-time.
Yes, it's a one-time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
And takes us
Thanks,
to
Kurt.
statement of support for the diversity equity, which we'll leave to Mike.
Sure. Rick, could you pull up the language?
It was email,
It was in an email.
but,
Yeah, I didn't do that.
you didn't get it?
We didn't get, when Rebecca and I talked later in today, we did not have any.
Oh,
Here. You got it, or I can send it?
Yeah, I got it.
Send it to district administrator. Don't open that one.
Yeah, she can pull it up here.
Okay.
Is that what you're in right now?
Oh, that's why it will be in that
Yeah, you can just-
Oh, I see. You sent it to the board members, but we didn't send it to me. That was my fault.
I thought Brian was going to say that. That's my secret.
No, you were the responsible one this time. You were the more responsible one. Not that it was your responsibility. But I believe everybody on the board had it emailed to them yesterday.
Yeah, so the gist of what I put in the email is I didn't want anyone to respond to having kind of quorum issues, but we had our meeting with the ad hoc committee going on a week and a half ago now. And one of the things that was consensus that came up when we were discussing like a roadmap of what we wanted to do moving forward was particularly staff, but everyone agreed that they wanted to have some form of language that would be a resolution of support from the board. If it had just been up to me, I probably wouldn't have brought this up entirely, because I think the board has already, by adopting the charter, expressly said that this is what we're looking to do. But I do think that there are some individuals that were specifically concerned about getting blowback about having difficult conversations. So in that was not something that was on my radar. And I appreciate the specific staff members who helped with this, the community members who also contributed some language too. So Brian had the original draft of this. We got some additional input from there, and I kind of refined it from that point. So this is a work of 4 of the members of the committee putting together. I'm specifically requesting that the board adopt this language just as a brief resolution that we say to the ad hoc committee, we support what you're doing. We're not going to tolerate in this district any of the things that I think we already said we're not going to tolerate, but putting it in a statement like this would be greatly appreciated. So that's where I'm at with it.
It also supports our staff who are going to be acting on the premise of bringing out some very difficult conversations within the classrooms that
Right.
may not be welcome in some places. They have to know we have their back.
Yeah, I think there are staff that actually are a little uncomfortable with what they're being asked to do, especially because they're now doing it in everybody's living room. And I think this is very important for our staff to know that we support them having those conversations.
Yeah, I really think the biggest thing about this is the last sentence.
Right.
That's where the real change from anything we've said before is. I mean, it's not really a change, it's just a statement about what we expect and can see from staff and how we feel about it.
We already have a policy on academic freedom. We already have talked about, we don't support, we don't support the activities that we're talking about there. We already have that policy. So, how does this get their back more than if we didn't have a state contract.
I think it's the last sentence. The fact that it says we stand behind educators who are leading these conversations in their classrooms. Saying that you won't, that you oppose racism or symbolism that is demeaning or malicious means you would prevent, like, a student from wearing the Confederate flag shirt. Okay, that's one thing. But to have a educator in a classroom saying, this is why people find the Confederate flag to be problematic is a different thing. We've all seen the national press once in a great while. There'll be some school district where something like this comes up and a teacher gets reprimanded or punished somehow for having had that discussion because the community didn't like it or somebody didn't like it.
I think where it falls in is when you start looking at some of the work we're doing, the professional development, the equity committee, it's tying all these things together. And what it's doing is it's just affirming that work. And it's kind of the answer to your why. Why are we doing an equity committee? Why are we doing professional development? Why are we looking at policies? It's because this just articulates this more specifically as a value of the board and of the work we do. And I think a number of districts have really adopted equity statements just for that purpose, to kind of just put a stamp of, we believe, even though we have all these things covered in different policies, it just puts a spotlight on this level of work and says this is why we're doing it.
And I guess to put a capstone on the whole issue, like I said, I didn't think this was necessary until why the individual specifically brought it up. And they brought up the fact that, you know, some of us live in a community that still hasn't put out any kind of statement since everything that happened earlier this year in May. Like, there still hasn't been a statement by the village about anything. And most of the communities in Dane County have at least put out a statement. So it's important to those who need to hear this. Many of us don't. But if it matters to just a couple of staff that this is said by us, it's worth saying. That's all.
Is there we should have a motion for the resolution.
I move we support the resolution.
Second.
Okay, so there is a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. And the resolution passes. And that should be time for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, lots of seconds.
Mike can have it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed stay here. And that got us at 8:30.